We'll go with the Giants first. The NFC East is, I mean, you talk about a division that's going to be discussed heavily on early on in the draft. I mean, would they have? But God, are we talking about like with the Jets plus the Giants plus the Eagles? Are we talking about like 8 of the first 12 picks here, or something like that? It's crazy because the Eagles
the NFC East has 7 picks in the first round.
Oh man, Debo,
that's a lot.
Debo, of course, Debo did NFC East first. Got to talk about the Eagles, but we'll start with the Giants. And look at the Giants with the number 5 and number 7 overall picks in the first round. Acquired one of those via the trade with the Bears, where the Bears came up to get Justin Fields, and then the Giants moved down and got Kadarius Toney, but only because the Eagles jumped them, leapfrogged them to steal Devontae Smith. Whole thing back there. Josh, what fits? What needs do the Giants have, and who might be a fit for them with 5 and 7?
It's a very similar conversation to what we had with the Jets. You're looking at cornerback, you're looking at edge rusher, you're looking at possibly offensive tackle, opposite of Andrew Thomas. New York has been a team that has been commonly linked to offensive tackle throughout the pre-draft process. They did go out and they signed Mark Glowinski, so you added some interior help there, but to possibly pursue an Evan Neal from Alabama or Charles Cross from Mississippi State or your guy Ike Ekwonu from NC State, maybe those guys are options. We've already talked about the cornerback and the edge rusher options, but one thing that's very interesting with the Giants, and you guys kind of alluded to this earlier, is the strategy that goes into it. Yeah. Because you've got number 5, you've got number 7, there's one pick in between, and that's held by the Carolina Panthers. So if you're looking at what Carolina may need at number 6 overall, and you're torn between a couple of players, take the player you don't think Carolina is going to take at number 6 overall, and then your guy's probably still going to be sitting on the board for you at number 7. So there's going to be a little gamesmanship as New York makes their first pick with the new regime.
Well, let's not forget too that this regime is not Dave Gettleman, which means I guess Dave Gettleman, they got the pick by trading down, but it took an absolute absurd haul for Dave Gettleman to finally agree to trade down for the first time in his history as a general manager. Joe Schoen, Joe Shane, would be a lot more likely to trade down, given that the Giants have to think that they're, a little, they're not. I mean, they could contend for a playoff berth in a really weak NFC if things really break their way. Daniel Jones has a big season, et cetera. But I do think the Giants look at this like, we could use more assets. Like there'd be nothing wrong with getting more assets. And if a team likes Kenny Pickett or likes Malik Willis, and either of those guys falls to 5, pretty good spot for them to be able to trade out, because the Carolina Panthers are such an obvious landing spot for quarterback, particularly if Jimmy G stays in Seattle and Baker goes to, if Jimmy G stays in San Francisco and Baker goes to Seattle, and if you're the Giants, you still have that pick at 7. So you're more than willing to let somebody snipe the Panthers, trade down. You're going to get a guy in 2 picks anyway. What concern traps? What like if you're Joe Shane and you're not trading down? I mean, are you planning on the Panthers going with quarterback? Or are you planning on, or do you think or do you say, all right, the Panthers are acting like they're going to go quarterback. They're clearly going to take, Evan Neal or Icky or whoever's there, or, we'll take the lineman and then we'll gamble on Kyle Hamilton at 7. I mean, what I was curious the strategy as well there.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly would be exploring all trade down options at 5, because I don't know what team would want to trade up. Maybe the Seahawks to get Malik Willis from 9 to 5 wouldn't be a huge haul. But if I couldn't trade down, to me, it needs to be Kayvon Thibodeau at 5, and or any of the offensive tackles, whether it's Icky, whether it's Charles Cross, or if Evan Neal is there. I think, wide receiver, they have the 36th pick at the top of the second round. The Giants could add more for Daniel Jones, or to me, who's going to be the next quarterback in 2023, a rookie. You can do that there with a lot more value than probably what you would get at a receiver position at 5 or 7. So it's assuming Aiden Hutchinson is getting close to being a lock to go number 1 overall. I think Kayvon Thibodeau would make a lot of sense. They need more edge rusher help, and you need a quality right tackle, like Josh said, opposite Andrew Thomas. I like Kyle Hamilton. I like Derek Stingley, but it just feels like those 2 positions, and specifically Kayvon Thibodeau, is the type of edge rusher that Joe Shane, having spent his time in Buffalo, they just picked Gregory Rousseau, who's kind of like a physical specimen, but not completely polished. I think he will gravitate toward that type of player. If they pick Kyle Hamilton, I won't think it's the worst selection in round one, but to me, it's got to be edge rusher, offensive tackle with those first 2 picks.
All right. Anything else with the Giants? The Giants are fascinating because we don't know. I mean, we sort of know how Joe Shane might operate because we've seen like they've acted very Joe Shane and Brian Dable have acted very similarly to Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. So move together, bring guys that sign cheap offensive linemen. So I think that sort of informs our thinking. The quarterbacks. Somebody in the chat, Jalen LeGrant, said that I'm telling y'all. Oh, Giants are sneaky quarterback pick. I'm telling y'all.
That would be an awesome smokescreen if they go this whole time and no one's really brought up the fact that they could pick a quarterback. I would pick a quarterback. I would pick Malik Willis. If I was Brian Dable, having spent time with Josh Allen the last 4 years, I would say, hey, yep, we're going to pick Daniel Jones. And then just at 5 right in front of the Panthers, crush the soul of Matt Rule and pick Malik Willis right in front of him.
That would be a tough scene. And then within the Panthers, there's panic pick Kenny Pickett, obviously.
Yes. One thing, I view the Giants as a team at 36 overall in round 2 that would make a lot of sense for David Ojabo, that if he falls because of the Achilles, just first year of a new regime, they can wait half a season, a full season for someone and say, hey, look, just get healthy for 2023. We want you to be, you and Azeez Ojulari be our 2 young, speedy, bendy edge rushers. That seems like a team that would be interested in making that selection kind of at the beginning of this quasi rebuilding process.
All right.
One thing I've got, and Traps, this is for you. So I don't want to catch you mid-drink there, but with Joe Shane coming over to New York, I mean, is there anything that you would tell Giants fans about how Brandon Beane has handled the draft? Any positional value tips or anything that you?
I already mentioned it, that with Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, Gregory Rousseau, and Spencer Brown, the Bills definitely during the Brandon Beane, Joe Shane era were willing to gamble on like raw, freaky athletes that were kind of boom or bust. Like I was not a fan of the Gregory Rousseau pick because I thought they should have been more in win now mode last season. But Rousseau was all about upside. So was Josh Allen. So was Tremaine Edmonds, being 19 years old when he was picked or whatever it was. So that's like the one overarching thing that I would say that beyond him understanding that, hey, you got to have a good offensive line in front of your quarterback, good receivers. It's just that they were willing to gamble on those boomer bust prospects that had high upside.
That is. So who fits the mold?
That's why I said Kayvon Thibodeau, because I don't think he's crazy polished. But if there's someone where you're like, hey, in 3 years, he could be Myles Garrett 2.0, it's Kayvon Thibodeau. So that's why I think Joe Shane would kind of lean in that direction.
Wouldn't Icky and Evan Neal also probably qualify? Not that they're necessarily busty, but just I probably shouldn't call
Evan Neal too. Evan Neal would be the guy, just being a little bigger than Icky,
prospect.
But not busty in any definition of that term. But yeah, I would say Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau would fit that mold. Maybe Icky too, because he's such a good athlete. But that's definitely something that the Bills liked relatively early in the draft over the last 3 or 4 years.
And I guess they haven't really. I mean, obviously they got Poyer and Hyde through free agency, so I don't know how much that informs us of like their possible interest in Kyle Hamilton. Because it may be a situation where they say like this guy could be cheap. He can be like the back end. Because I mean, clearly safety is important or is important to the current Bills regime. I mean, I would assume typically speaking, when you have, Joe Shane, came up from under Brandon Beane. I mean, they're going to operate in pretty similar fashion. Like you're going to, he'll have different ideas, of course, and different methods, but typically speaking, you're going to operate in something close. So I just sort of wonder. I think that safety question is intriguing, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, do they view that position so importantly that they're willing to invest a top 10 pick in Kyle Hamilton and be able to let him become, whatever Poyer and Hyde are, or do they feel like they want to have veteran help there?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to peg. I certainly think that Joe Shane understands the importance of not only having 2 good safeties, but Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde literally play both positions. They're not one of them is a free safety. They play strong safety. They do everything. That's what Kyle Hamilton can bring to your defense. But like you mentioned, Jordan Poyer was a low-level free agent signing who was a 7th round pick. Micah Hyde was a 5th round pick. there also is a school of thought that Joe Schoen will say, hey, look, like it's more of the scheme. Let's just plug in, like you said, veterans or maybe later round picks that kind of fit a specific role as opposed to getting that blue chip guy inside the top 10.